Welcome. Hello. It's time for Blocktalk. We're on Bitcoin block 476794. So, I almost forgot to get up the network stats page here. But we got a lot of crazy news in Bitcoin today. You know, the little bit of resolution to the whole scaling debate. And are you excited?
I won't believe it till I see it actually happen, but it's looking like we're going to get SegWit by the end of the month.
Well, the blocks are churning out real good, and you know, we got lots of transactions in the mempool waiting for them. So our sponsors for the show today is Bittrex. These guys are an altcoin exchange that have lots of Bitcoin pairings, hundreds of markets, and they're actually adding a lot of Ethereum markets and pairings now too. So you can trade not only Ethereum ICO tokens, there's a lot of more traditional currencies that are available like Dash and whatnot. You can trade pairings, and of course USD markets, and full fiat integration is coming soon. Our other sponsor is CoinCards. Coincards.ca. So you can cash your Bitcoin out and purchase goods for hundreds of Canadian vendors. So what you do is you send them Bitcoin. They send you a gift card, whether it's electronic or physical ones, and you can spend it online. They usually deliver in the same day. And yeah, it's a really great service run by a community member in Vancouver here, and he's doing really well. Yeah, it's a great business. As usual, if you guys have any questions in the live chat, I will be happy to answer them. And without further ado, so hi, welcome from Decontrol, the awesome basement in Bitcoin land here. I got myself, Alex, Kiko, and Taylor, so our resident panel, and we'll see who shows up in the live chat. And we have our guest of honor, Ross Gerber, Kawasaki. How's it going?
It's just Ross Gerber. My partner is Kawasaki. I'm good.
Oh, okay. Sorry, my mistake. But you're part of, I guess, a wealth management company, Gerber Kawasaki.
Yes, I am.
Oh, so you got the lead name there too. You must have a pretty good relationship, I guess, with your partner.
Well, yes, I do actually. But yeah, I founded it with my partner. But originally, I had another company where I actually hired my partner and helped him grow his career. And then he got so good, I was like, you know what, let's start our own company and do it again. And now we're managing $600 million in assets. And we've taken about $3 to $4 million every week of new capital. I recently, and I'm in the news almost every day for what we're doing as far as trading stocks. You know, there's become an era where nobody trades stocks anymore, and there's this fallacy that, you know, like trading stocks is some sort of like, you know, loser's game, that which is somewhat true for a lot of people, but there's really a movement against trading stocks and just owning index funds. And so I feel like I'm one of the last people out there, you know, really doing it the sort of old style. So we build portfolios for our clients that include lots of different assets, but include individual issue stocks. So I've made a lot of money trading stocks over the years, and just, you know, we're probably up a few million just this week. So, you know, we've been making, you know, anywhere from $2 to $5 million a day in profits, trading profits. So, you know, we run a pretty big business. I have 20 traders, investment advisors who are all millennials. Everybody in the firm is millennial, except for me and my partners who are Gen X. We're growing like crazy, and, you know, it's cool because we're being followed by everybody. I was ranked the 51st most influential person in the blockchain, which is pretty cool for a guy who wasn't really like a crypto guy. I just happen to know some people who are big in Bitcoin several years ago, and had a huge debate with them, and it ended up convincing me of the potential of cryptocurrencies. But more importantly, I feel like my goal is to help educate people involved with cryptocurrencies on what it really is to manage a financial institution, how to build trust in markets for investors, and also how to make money doing this, because, you know, it is a pretty unique opportunity. And from our perspective, from the retail perspective, we've never seen so much interest in Bitcoin. I literally have people calling me, and I'm like, I can't do this. I'm not even allowed to like email about it. And right now, probably regulators will watch this. So it's, you know, it's quite a fun thing being me. Does my wife want to be in the show? Do you want to be in the show? Why don't you put something on nice? So no, she's not going to do that. I thought maybe I could do that. You guys would be impressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's see. That was my younger wife. Yeah, and so I got involved with cryptocurrencies, and I'm really bullish on it now that the Trump administration took over. So I think that a lot of what we're seeing right now today is 100% related to the uncertainty that I certainly didn't expect to happen again post-financial crisis. So the most interesting part of Bitcoin to me was the fact that it was formed from the financial crisis, which I lived through as a trader and working actually with a division of AIG at the time. So it was really fun. And so when I originally got involved, I never thought the world would be that screwed up again, where cryptocurrencies would have the opportunity that it ended up having. But look at what happened. Now the whole world is a mess. And all of a sudden, decentralized currencies make so much sense to so many people across the world. And that's why the price is rising and will continue. So I'm in. I don't know if I believe in it, but I do believe in the concept. And hopefully people will figure out how to actually not steal everybody's money so that they can make this work.
Yeah, I know you mentioned the conversation in the past was I guess pre-Trump, and that for a lot of people, like Bitcoin was still kind of not being taken too seriously, and that uncertainty really drives a lot of people to look for other options outside of the U.S. dollar. But it's interesting to not see gold move the same way that you would expect in the same sort of scenario. So it's almost like Bitcoin is cannibalizing some of that.
Well, I wish you guys wish that was true. I mean, gold is related to inflation. So there's no inflation. We've had deflationary pressures for almost a decade now. So we don't see gold appreciating unless inflation appreciates. So that I think is more relevant to gold. Bitcoin is appreciating because of uncertainty. So maybe gold is less a value for uncertainty like it used to be, and more just pure inflation, where Bitcoin has become more like the VIX, where it's like works more on uncertainty.
Yeah, I think that's a pretty good analogy, because it is becoming more stable every day. We do see some crazy candles like
Bitcoin. It was the least stable I've seen in the last week in a couple of years. I mean, look at the trading today. I showed my wife the chart. I go, look at this chart. How do you trade this chart? Which she doesn't even really care or know about charts, but I like things that have a little bit more certainty with the pattern. But the last few days, but I'm sure Bitcoin people are happy to see back at 2,800.
Yeah, here, let me share the screen for the audience members, just so watching sometime in the future.
Like, you could have made a shitload of money just in like a week if you played this right. It's just tough to play. See, look at that chart. That's a tough chart.
Yeah, but it's not hard to hold. I mean, like when I'm talking about Bitcoin's really, has good certainty. I'm talking about stability, like down here, $300 to $400. That's 25% over a range over 2 years. That's, that's really stable. But,
no, I mean that's when I got involved. It was pretty stable, but you didn't have volume, so it was going through the post, the first Bitcoin crash, so it was still like, basing and sort of getting its real true believers back into Bitcoin. And now you've got speculators back in it, and it took off. But I think, I'm a buy and hold Bitcoin guy. I don't trade Bitcoin. I think it's kind of a fool's game. But I think as a holder over time, I've made, hundreds of %. It's a small investment, but I think that's where the money's to be made. It's just as an investment.
Well, it's a bit of a science experiment, and today we had a really good kind of result of that experiment. Kind of had one of our main software upgrades that's triggered. So that's where this massive green candle has come out of. It's kind of finally some resolution to a bit of the scaling debate has gone underway today. Because when I talk about cryptocurrencies and trying to find a good analogy of what other asset would really even be comparing to this, it's like if SpaceX, the company, had a trading stock. It would be trade very similarly.
Successful rocket launch for them.
Yeah, but the thing is, And all the time we see rockets blowing up on the launch pad. These are not like events that should be tradable.
Well, no, I mean, SpaceX in essence does trade like on, you know, the private markets, you know, and all, you know, today we're seeing markets in the private side, like almost like public markets, which has supplanted because of regulation. So that's why the ICO thing is happening too. It's because the SEC and the regulators have gotten so prohibitive to go public, even for small companies. I mean, it used to be a small company could go public at 20 million, 30, 40 million. You know, now it's just so expensive. So it created these private markets, and that's kind of like what Bitcoin is in my mind too. So I kind of look at it like a stock. I mean, it's just a stock that represents something, and people trade it, and it's just like a privately traded company, you know.
So would you view Bitcoin as a stock, or like what kind of asset would you paint Bitcoin as?
Well, it's not an asset at all. It doesn't own anything, you know. So Bitcoin is all, it's kind of like a fugazi, you know. It's like if everybody believes it, it's real. So it's okay, because that is how actually monetary systems work. You know, the real monetary system was based around gold, so that was like real. But when the idiot people in government started spending more money than they had to get off the gold standard. And so all money is essentially a fugazi. I mean, what's a dollar? So it doesn't really mean anything unless we trust that it will be able to be transferred for value, you know. So Bitcoin still hasn't been successful at that. It's really hard to transfer Bitcoin for actual goods or services. It's easy to transfer Bitcoin to other people, and which also put a lot of strain on the system too, because there's more transactions than it can handle, because that's what Visa does, really, you know. So I think what Bitcoin has become is sort of like, you know, like a video game currency, or like that's where its roots came from, actually, where I might trade for a virtual good in a video game, but it's still real because people will pay for it. And so if I can change my Venezuelan dollars, or my Argentine dollars, or my Ukrainian dollars, or my Turkish lira, or whatever currency in the world from some shitty government that's basically debasing it on a daily basis, why wouldn't I change it to Bitcoin? And that's what is happening across the world, is people realize their governments are just stealing from them, like in Brazil, and the currencies are dropping, and you're better off just putting your money in Bitcoin or gold, but not in the Brazilian real.
Yeah, and like with regards even to inflation, like Bitcoin is what, like 6 or 5% inflation right now, and it's only going to go lower.
Well, that's the brilliance of it.
Where a big chunk of this chart comes from, just supply dropping in half and demand.
That's right. That's why I started investing in it, because it was simple math to me. Is if you don't have inflation and you have a fixed value that no government or person can manipulate, it is kind of like gold in that it has a limited supply, which makes Bitcoin valuable relative to currencies like, you know, like in Brazil is a perfect example of a major economy where the government is so bad and so corrupt. They're indicting everybody. It's like, what's the value of a Brazilian real? I think that's more of a fugazi than a Bitcoin. So if I lived in Brazil, I would be transferring my money to anything other than a Brazilian real. You know, like, so Bitcoin has become incredibly valuable because the governments have become so invaluable. They've become so bad at serving their purpose that now it's a disaster almost worldwide among almost every major government in the world. So we're investing in China now because China looks stable, you know. I don't know.
Yeah, they're stable because I guess they're growing a little bit slower than usual, but even still,
yeah, like 7% growth with no elections. You know, you don't have to worry about elections.
There's not a lot of uncertainty there.
Yeah, totally. I'm a Z fan. You know, I don't care.
And there's great investment going in on by their companies and other.
They're capitalists. You know, they're flat out capitalists. And there's a lot of stuff we're trading in China that's a lot like Bitcoin. You know.
Well, a lot of the Bitcoin community, or at least I think the mining aspect, and even a lot of the volume was it happens in China too. Like,
that's the biggest risk. Is I think they're trying to corner Bitcoin in China. A lot of the Chinese miners. I mean, I think 90% of the mining is in China, and that's a horrible thing for Bitcoin.
I'm hearing about major farms though still in Seattle and even in like northern Canada, like in Quebec region.
Well, you guys are pretty smart, so you guys know how to get around these kind of governments that try to like limit what Bitcoin is trying to be. You said the Chinese government definitely wants to limit what Bitcoin can be, and so if they control all the miners, then they're not that worried, you know.
But the Chinese exchanges allowing withdrawals again because they shut
Yeah,
down.
yes, they are, but it's all limited and controlled now. So now you have to put in your email and you have to like sign up for your account like in America, you know.
So we've seen a major explosion, I think, with ICOs and like and Bitcoin being very a lot of trading happening too, because I think of the reduced fees attached to it all, like because it's not established in a traditional system setting a price.
Right.
Because how much would you say that like the average fee is to trade Snapchat, or like if for you every day it costs of your company?
You know, I think, you know, our fee is high and it's like $8-9, and like, you know, we were in a world when I used to trade as a kid at like $30 a trade, you know, and it's what I tell everybody. It's like, if you're worried about the $8-9, the $3, the $2, that's not actually the game at all. You know, the game is like the $5,000 I just dropped on a bad Twitter trade or whatever, you know. So the $9 isn't what you should be worried about. The ICO thing is more, again, a byproduct of like all the funding that's going on privately and mechanisms that have been created to do that. Like there's companies, you know, that in each industry now that have set up like fractional share ownership in real estate, like a company called Realty Mogul. There's a company called Flash Funders where companies can seek funding on the internet and, you know, raise money. And so the Jobs Act allowed for these kind of new funding mechanisms for small businesses to try to spur the economy. So ICOs in a way kind of like bounced out of that out of nowhere. And now everybody's like so into it. But the problem is people are going to steal people's money with it, and then it destroys the credibility of it. Because an ICO isn't like a Bitcoin where there's all these fixed algorithmic protections. An ICO is just made up by the dudes who make it up that day. And there's already like tons of them. And people are going to lose their money. I mean, they're just going to lose their money. There's a lot of crooks out there. And then it kills the credibility.
Yeah, and like we've talked about Bitcoin being different now than like a lot of the ICOs. I think you can classify a lot of these assets into 3 different areas. You have currencies like Bitcoin and other mineable things that require resources to actually create. You have like IOUs that are basically like stocks, like they maybe do dividends or some form of revenue sharing.
Cash flow, right.
Yeah, and then the third one being there's like completely new use cases. Like this is currency that's used in an app, and or it's an incentivization, like almost like air miles.
That's called stealing. That's called stealing.
Well, I would say they're trying to pre-sell their product, so it's not too much.
Right, but what it ends up becoming is what we call stealing. You know, so it starts off all nice and happy, but like I tell this to everybody who's never seen a lot of money in the same place. People start acting differently, you know. So all these nice young kids, like I can't believe this Russ Ulbricht is in jail for the rest of his life, you know, and how out of control Silk Road got. I mean, if you read this stuff, I mean, it's got to be a movie. I think they're making one. Like how out of control some little thing like I want to trade weed with Bitcoin becomes like this huge drug bazaar where he's like trying to kill people, you know. So that's the problem with money, is people try to steal it all the time. So they try to steal it every way they can. And the more you make it easier for them to do that, and the more people, young people, you guys are so trusting of like an app, you know? And I'm like I looked at the Robinhood app, okay? Because you guys wanted to talk about it. And I go onto this app and I'm like, why would you ever open an account with these people? Like, it's an app. They have no track record, no history. You have no idea even where you're sending your money. And you just trust them with all this money, but the whole fucking thing could collapse one day and be a disaster. Because if you really read the disclosure, it says we can't afford to actually have zero cost trading, but we raised $66 million from idiots who are paying for your trading. It's just like Uber or whatever, where they like basically give away a service at a loss until they run out of money and go bankrupt. Okay. And that's what's going to happen to Robinhood. And if they're smart, they exit before they go bankrupt, and somebody else has to pay all the bills. But like this thing can't end well when you're like, it costs money to do all this stuff, you know? So where does it end?
We got a great comment in the YouTube live chat. That's why it's called the Robin Hood app.
Right. It's like they're stealing from the poor, right?
Oh, yeah.
So, you know, then the second thing is I absolutely don't believe that people should be trading on their own. Like, you guys know more about Bitcoin than 99% of people, and that's why you should trade that, you know, because that's what you do all day, and you have this podcast, and this is your life, right? So your knowledge of something is so much higher, and that's how you make money in trading, is you have to know more than everybody else. And if you don't stay up all night studying, and if you don't work harder to know more than everybody else, and that's why I'm in the news every day, is because I know more than everybody else when it comes to Facebook, Netflix, whatever, you know, and I put in more work, and I know some of these companies 20, 30, 40 years, like Disney and Apple, and it's just like, so you want to trade against me, kid, on your Robinhood app, you're dead. So I learned this lesson when I was in my 20s. I got to go to the New York Stock Exchange. It was 1999, and I got to go with a floor trader when trading was all manual, kind of with the phones, at the top of the market in the bubble when AOL and Time Warner merged. And it was like mayhem on the floor of the exchange. And I was like, this is the coolest thing I've ever done. And I was like sweating and running from post to post, walked with this guy trading millions, right? And he stopped me and he said, see all these guys right here? And they're all like banging trades. Like, I've never seen fingers move that fast. And he goes, see, the dumb people of the public, they trade against us. And what they don't know is they're never going to win. So all they do is take the opposite side of every trade the public makes, and they make a ton of money. And that's the way it used to work. The specialists on the exchange, all they do is take the other sides of trades. So you come to me, you want to buy 10,000 shares of Apple, I have no problem selling it to you. And as long as I keep doing that all day, I'm going to make money, just like a casino. So the stock market, or all trading, is like a casino where, and I say this every day, where the dumb people give money to the smart people. And that's what I do every day, is I just extract money from dumber people than me. And I know it's not nice, but that somebody's on the other side of every trade. Yep. You know, and there's somebody trying to take my money just as bad. I'm a big Tesla owner, stock owner, and every day people are attacking my positions and attacking me and Tesla and everything, and they're trying to lose my money. I got, let's say, 10 million in this thing, and if it jumps tomorrow, you know, 10%, I make $1 million fucking dollars, you know, and if it drops 10%, I lose $1 million, and every day there's a battle there, you know. So it's like, when the average guy goes on to Robinhood and wants to trade, you're just giving your money away. And so convincing young people who need to save their money to buy a house one day, or have an IRA, or just buy a freaking ETF or mutual fund, and just like accept that gambling is gambling and you're not qualified to do this, you're going to just lose your money over time. And so that's why I'm against it. I want people to be investors, but I want them to learn the right way. I'd rather have them do a robo-advisor. Maybe you don't make a lot of money, but you're not going to lose anything. Mm-hmm. And then you grow up and you realize, hey, you know what? I want to build my wealth. I want to have money one day, not just be like gambling because it won't work. And that's why I say, like Bitcoin, you guys are so smart because you're in something. And if you do this for the next 10 years and you just like own these Bitcoins and whatever, and you don't fuck around, it's going to work. I mean, it'll work. You'll have money, you know, and you probably have made some decent money already. If we can get these exchanges to be honest. So that's the main risk. Like, I don't trust Coinbase, you know.
Well, it's funny. Where I really shined, I think, in Bitcoin was like learning how to trade, because the fees were so low, and not only trading cryptocurrencies and Bitcoin, using that tech and like to fund like other brokerage accounts, so I could actually trade traditional stocks and forex. All using Bitcoin and paying far less. Right. To the point where I could have a portfolio that's like $100, yeah, like I shouldn't, pump more money into it any more than I'm willing to lose, and learn from that. And I can get to the point where I could be a wealth advisor, or like have the same skill set. Because does it really require a formal education to be good at trading?
Not really. What a formal education helps you with is the analysis. And so there's a lot more to, let's say, buying a stock than, let's say, just trading currencies or whatever, because there's ownership and there's fundamental value there. So, we buy companies. It's a little different than just trading. So, when you buy a company, there's a lot of formal education involved with that analysis. So, like, pure traders have certain weaknesses in that if you don't have the fundamental analysis behind, let's say, trading currencies or trading, and you don't understand macroeconomics, for example, it's harder to trade a currency. So you can study that on your own, but if you're trading currencies, you got to know macro, and that's that. So it is. It's whether you learned it formally or informally. On the floor of the exchange, it was not formally educated people. Like, a lot of the traders were like rough and tumble dudes, but they knew how to make money. So I have a friend like that, and he's from New York. And he taught me a lot. I was an LA guy, and he taught me how to make money. This is how you make money, kid. And like in LA, there's nobody who like teaches you stuff like that. It's like, hey, you want to be an actor, or whatever. So, so certainly you can be a successful trader without a formal education, and many are. But a lot of them are basically gamblers who are pretty good. And there's a lot of good gamblers.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of guys in the Bitcoin trading scheme that also do a lot of sports betting and stuff too, knowing that like they can't do it traditionally, like with like an identity tied to it. So like anonymous trading is where a lot of people have seen a use case with Bitcoin too, like being able to fund an account with like no SIN number attached to it.
Yeah, I know. I mean, there's so many places you can use Bitcoin because of over-regulation or whatever. And I thought for international transfers, it was phenomenal. So like, if I want to transfer money to Canada, it's a pain in my ass. And so the fact that I can just give you a barcode right now and transfer you money, like, that's amazing. So, I think there's some interesting stuff going on with PayPal now and Apple and Venmo. And if Venmo takes Bitcoin, I mean, kaboom, it's all over. And that's really what it takes. It's like a free transfer system like Venmo getting involved with Bitcoin. And then this thing explodes, because then you guys could transfer Bitcoin back and forth between currencies to buy stuff instantly. I lost sound. There you go.
Sorry, we were opening beers here and we tried to be subtle about it.
I really agree with your characterization of what's happening in the altcoin market. Like, it's mostly scams, and it's probably most of the people buying altcoins right now are going to lose all their money.
Right. And you don't want that. It hurts the credibility of what you're trying to do.
I've been just waiting for the SEC to make some comment or make some, at least.
They're not going to. I deal with the SEC.
For it all to collapse before saying anything.
No, you have to understand the SEC. Like, I've unfortunately I have to deal with the SEC now because I'm big enough, and I do have to say the guys I've dealt with have been very good. Like, they're smart guys and they're thorough, but their job is protecting investors within the system, not outside of the system. So they don't get this shit at all. I mean, you think somebody at the SEC understands Bitcoin? I offered to help them, and they're like, sure, we'll get around to that when there's some mandate from the president, and the president's just cutting their budget, so they're just trying to do their jobs, So I do have to say positive things about my interactions with the SEC, but the government's very limited in their resources and their ability to understand complex things like Bitcoin. I mean, I'm one of the few people in my whole industry that understands it, I mean, it's kind of crazy. And they're like, oh, you talk to like all these kids and shit. And I'm like, I'm just a grown-up kid. I'd rather hang out with these kids than you guys, and so like, I get that I don't delegitimize you guys because you dressed in shorts and stuff. Like, I get it, but I was a counterculture guy when I still am, so So I like what you're doing, I just want you guys to do it right so that it doesn't blow up in everybody's face and you go back to square one,
So something that happened in the traditional investment world was a Snapchat IPO, which
Yeah.
was, I think, probably very similar to a lot of the ICOs that are going on right now. Of like, it was an
Totally.
overhyped app.
All these IPOs are as big as scams as the ICOs, okay? And I'm the guy on Twitter banging on every one of them. I was on every news channel, CNN, everyone saying, do not buy this piece of crap, And I'm here, I know Evan and, I know the Snapchat people. I live in Venice. I have insight we have clients as employees, I know what's going on there. And actually, I just posted an article. He's on a yacht for 3 weeks partying and he should be, he's like totally worked everybody. Like I give the guy total credit, but like for investors, you don't want anything to do with this shit. And then it was like the Blue Apron IPO, and I was like, why would you ever do that? It went from 10 to 6 in like a week. And then they tried to take Yoga Works public, losing $10 million a year, and they couldn't even get out today. So venture capitalists are freaking so crooked. I mean, look at what happened with all the girls that are attacking and stuff. Like, if you're like a female trying to raise money in Silicon Valley, it's like ridiculous what's going on there. And I know some of the people involved, and I was shocked, like when all this shit went down, because a lot of these guys are good guys. And I was like, dude, you let this crap happen at your firm, like really? Because at my firm, it's like none of that crap goes on, and everybody's young, but it's like. So anyways, these VCs, it's totally the same thing. And I think the IPO market, about 50% of it is just totally crooked. So I agree. But see, the problem with the ICO market is if you lose your money, your repercussions are much tougher and much less. There's already class action suits against Morgan Stanley and everybody for the losses,
So what advice would you have for some of the people like in the space who have a tech company, they're very passionate in it, and like they're developing some good stuff. They have this opportunity to get funding in two ways, like deal with a VC, give them a bunch of equity in their company, or go the ICO route if you have no equity.
Well, see, the ICO route is a complicated way of just calling your friends and raising money. So when I started my company, it's like we went to our employees, we went to our friends, and we said we need $500,000, and we all put up our own money, and you write on a piece of paper, this guy gave you 50,000 and this guy gave you 10,000. It's no different than an ICO, but it's like, why do you need to create this like tradable security? In fact, you really don't want to do that. What you really want is something that's solid. So the guy who gives you 50 grand, because you're going to need to ask somebody for 50 grand, and he gives you 50 grand, that's a lot of money, right? It's $50,000 check. You say, this is what you get. He doesn't want to see that going like this every day. So if you really want to raise money, the way you do it is with a pen and a paper and a phone, and you call up your people and you raise money and you do your app or you do your business. The ICO thing, it's the easy money route. People are thinking there's this quick money they can make. So if they come out with an ICO, they'll raise money. But if it doesn't turn into something, which 99% won't, it's just going to all blow up, and then it kills the whole concept. And that's essentially what's going to happen.
They still got all the money from the community.
Well, they get their money, but see, like investors. See, I grew up in a place called Philadelphia in school, and in Philadelphia, I used to work at a bar, and this bar was controlled by the Irish guys. And if you didn't pay them back, it was a big mistake. It was just a big mistake. So eventually people who give you $50,000 want to get paid back. And if you don't pay them back, it can be really bad. And that's what happens in the real world. And that's what happened with Silk Road. And that's what happens when there's big money involved is sometimes people even die. So, it's not a game when you're taking people's money. I control a lot of money, and trust me, people, it's their life savings. And I try to explain to my wife too, which I don't think people understand the pressure that you feel with $600 million on your computer that you're trading every day. And it's like, I don't want to lose money, A, and B, God forbid there's another financial crisis. I mean, I could lose $100 million, boom. And So when you get bigger, all these games change. And that's the thing about Bitcoin. It's got to grow up. And the ICO market, all this stuff's got to grow up, because if you're going to be 50 billion, 100 billion, $200 billion value, and that's what all you guys definitely want to happen, you guys got to legitimize it. And that's where I come in. I'm like the legitimizer. So I can help you guys make what you're doing legitimate so that the public can actually get involved. And if the public could buy Bitcoin, just if 1% of their portfolio was legally able to buy Bitcoin, the price of Bitcoin would be like 20,000, you know? So how do you make it legit?
So if you do have, let's say you have Bitcoin as 1% of your portfolio, and then it explodes, it's now 99% of your portfolio. How do you exit that? Like,
You
how
sell.
do you diversify from doing well in crypto? Like, what's an industry that's more exciting? That's the challenge, I think, now.
Tesla.
Really?
That stock, I mean, we've made hundreds of percent on this stock. What?
You're just talking your book now.
Well, my book is making me millions. You don't have to do it. You can do whatever you want. I'm just telling you where we're making millions of dollars. I just bought MGM stock and pulled out probably $1 million today on that when it got added to the S&P 500. So trading stocks is a wonderful way to make money, and it's a lot easier than what you're doing. You can.
I disagree very much.
I'm telling you,
it's so easy to make money in this space.
Well,
maybe not to the volumes you're talking about, but like on an individual user basis.
Operate in your space because of the size issue, you know. So you know, we need liquidity. You know, we can barely operate in small cap stocks. You know, so it's like, I'm just saying, like, you know, I've always made, like, I was like you trading stocks when I was 20. You know, it's no different really. But the difference with stocks is you can collect dividends every quarter on your holdings. So you're actually getting paid to hold stocks, where you don't get paid anything to hold Bitcoin. And there's a fundamental behind the stock. So when you're losing, if the company is still good, you can hold your way out of it. Where something like Bitcoin can just kind of collapse and there's no fundamental company behind it. So when you're trading stocks, like what we try to do is find something that is really solid, but has enough volatility we can make money, you know, and you know, and a lot of times we'll trade options around those stocks, you know, so trading options definitely increases your leverage and return. So like, for example, I have a position in Tesla that's all call options, they're long call options. So we look for like mathematical anomalies where you have opportunities because the markets are off and things like that, where you know, you can just make money, you know. It's like selling calls, you know. I sell calls against Tesla, like it's earnings season right now. So like, I'll give you an example. Facebook is going to trade next week on, I think, Wednesday. We're doing earnings on CNBC. And Facebook is reporting. You know, Facebook has been going up every day into the report. So you go long Facebook today, you know, and you hold it until Tuesday, you'll probably do pretty good, but you got to get out of it before earnings. We don't know which way the stock's going to go after earnings, you know. So let's say Facebook drops heavy after earnings, then you can buy the stock because we've seen bounces after like those extreme drops, for example. So you can look for patterns and stuff and really just make money on certain types of trades and things like that. So the stock market has plenty of opportunities with your Bitcoin profits where you can still trade and be opportunistic, but have some fundamental safety with your overall investment.
So one thing that probably fueled a lot of this ICO one, there's a certain type of ICO that's not really technical. It's actually focusing more on finance, basically making something analogous to what you offer or even what a traditional stock offers with dividends by doing buybacks. So they put their profits into the market, buy back tokens, and are able to destroy them in a provable way. So people are able to do like hedge funds and say like, yeah, send us money, we'll manage your portfolio, and then we're able to destroy the currency.
Yeah,
and
that's
create
crooked. That's crooked.
over time.
That's crooked.
But if they're able to do it provably and over a long period
There's
of time.
no way to do that. There's no way to do that. You know,
it's just like the
see. So here's the thing. So let me give you this theory. So computers are so overrated. Okay, like all this talk about robots taking over people, it's so overrated. When my Google Maps takes me through the worst path ever through LA, like trying to cross streets that you can't cross and all this. So computers don't work that well. The internet doesn't work that well. It's shoddy. Okay. The whole fucking architecture of programming, most programming is based off Microsoft crap architecture. So the entire internet is basically cobbled together crap. Even the freaking cable lines are all old and crappy, right? So you guys trust all this technology so much, but when the internet turns off, okay, what do? You know, so cash will always be king. You know, like there's this thing about paper and cash. Like we don't really keep files anymore. You know, everything's digital. You know, so it's almost like freaky because we go in, like, imagine one day if we turn on our computers and the money was gone. You know, like what would we do? And, you know, it's scary. It's scary. So we trust all this electronics. So there's backups to everything in finance. And that's what the virtual world hasn't done yet, which is creating these redundancy backups so that if things don't work, then we have a backup. Bitcoin did it really smart because of the blockchain. So the blockchain is really smart. But if I create algorithms that don't have these finite controls, like what you're talking about, I just manipulate it. I make an algorithm that it looks like I'm destroying it, but it's really not. I always make this joke to Bitcoin people, like, what happens if it turned out that Bitcoin was just a joke and the guy pushes a button and all your money's gone? You know, you don't know. You just trust an algorithm.
Bitcoin's code is open source, and
yeah, but I would say, who the hell is Satoshi? It's not going. This Satoshi story makes the whole Bitcoin thing seem like a total joke. You know, it's like he's some like weird Japanese character that nobody knows where he is, and like,
so
you think that
he
helps?
was very smart to maintain his anonymity.
Yeah.
yeah, because he's breaking it in. He's probably a billionaire. Whoever.
Well, we would know if Satoshi transferred any of his coins. That's something that I think a lot of people have trade bots ready on as soon as they see a transaction broadcast. But as for redundancy and like being able to store value, like if the internet goes down, I don't think Facebook stock will be doing too well.
Oh no, it's a problem for everybody. No, that's true, and that's a problem for everybody. But Facebook's still a company where people go to work every day.
It'll be great.
Yeah. Tesla wouldn't be doing so well. and I keep a lot of my Bitcoin on paper right now. Some of like multiple backups of it too. So it's like,
yeah, but that's smart. But most people don't do that. But what I'm saying is that you trust other people to build algorithms for these new ICOs, and who's to say that they're doing it honestly?
This is true. That was so predictable.
What?
And so spectacular.
Yeah, this is on the Ethereum side. So Ross, I'm not sure how attuned you are to Ethereum's history, but
a little bit. And how about how the money got stolen the first day?
Yep, smart contract.
Yeah,
doing poorly. Yep.
I did follow the whole thing, and I can't believe that I actually bought some, and I can't believe it's gone up like 10 million% or whatever, because it had the worst start like of anything you could want. Right, like the first day, $50 million disappeared, and then it was like they had like forks and problems, and but what they did, which worked, was they created something that could be used for financing companies. I think that's the concept. It was like sort of a venture capital concept in a way.
It's an amazing ICO platform when you can create a stock with 40 lines of code and like. And
it sucks to be the first guy who like completely blew up and
totally
took your idea and then millionaires overnight.
Right, that's exactly right. So the first guy wiped out, and the other guys came in and bought it for like $5. I remember it was like $10, $15, and I was like, I won't touch this thing. I barely trust this Bitcoin, you know. And then I ended up buying some at 100 or something or whatever it was, and. So,
even though there's a company that kind of backs Ethereum, like a foundation or like even a for-profit venture in New York, like you wouldn't trust it any more than Bitcoin?
Well, see, I know some of the people involved with Bitcoin, and they're not trustworthy in any way, you know. So, you know, if you want to talk about the Bitcoin Foundation and the history of Bitcoin, it's an illicit currencies, and I get that. And I have no problem with it either. But but there are, you know, many criminal elements involved with Bitcoin, including the company that's sponsoring the show, which is essentially money laundering, you know. So like, I get that, and it exists, but you know, like, pot's legal now, so the need for that goes down a lot. You know, I don't need to money launder as much. You know, once they let it in the system, you won't need to do all that stuff as much. You know, so maybe Bitcoin has an issue with legalization. You know, I don't know. Maybe that hurts Bitcoin, but
because it's not a small industry we're talking either.
it's a huge amount of Bitcoin money is going through drugs, and that's fine. But you know, it's like, if it's legal, that changes the need for that. But
probably because they can't get a bank account though. Like,
right,
cash is pretty expensive to use as you're meeting.
In fact, if I was a Bitcoin guy out there, I'd be hitting up every dispensary right now. Why aren't the dispensaries all taking Bitcoin?
Oh, you're gonna love hearing about weed coins then. Like, there's just oodles of them that all can solve this problem so much better than even Bitcoin.
Oh God, no. I think you're better off just converting your money into weed, putting it in your backyard, right? And it's like storing it, than like a weed coin. Like, why would you do that? At least, if my friend used to say when we were in college, he's like, look, which would you rather have, a stack of money or a stack of weed? He's like, if I have a stack of weed, I know I can get anything anywhere, you know? And I used to laugh, you know, it's like, it's a better currency. It was a better currency in college. You know, weed could get you anything at Penn.
Like, ammo is a really good currency too. Yeah.
So I don't know if you need weed coins. Once again, I just think it's a way to separate people from their money, and people work really hard at figuring out ways to separate people from their money. And you know, just watch Wizard of Lies on HBO if you want to see the master himself. You know, Bernie Madoff stealing, you know, $17 billion. I mean, it's crazy. So people do it, and they do it in my business, and they do it in every business, and the more trusting people are. And see, the problem with your generation is you guys are really trusting, and you're lovely people, and you're nice, and you grew up in nice places, and so you're not used to like the dude who just steals your shit, you know. And unfortunately, those people exist, you know, and that's the problem with all these things. It's like, what are the protections? What are the protections? So like, if you took your mom's money and all your mom's money, and you gave it to Coinbase, or you gave it to an exchange, and you trade, you want to know that that money is going to be there, you know? And I don't know if you can really safely say that about any exchange.
Well, yeah, it's funny. I guess our generation is kind of trusting. Like, in the past, like, your parents always said, you know, don't talk to strangers, or don't meet strangers on the internet, don't get in cars with strangers. Now it's like, you on your phone, you meet have someone from the internet come and pick you up. I saw
that joke on the internet the other day, and I thought it was the funniest thing I've seen in a while. It's so true. You literally, like, you have some stranger just pick you up in a random car, you know? I mean, and you just are like, hey, I do it.
Well, it's
then again, the cab driver was worse.
But do you trust giving out your credit card number, like when you pay for something every day? Like that requires a huge amount of trust in both the merchant and also in the Visa network.
No, that's why you have insurance, because your credit card's stolen every freaking month. It's like they shut down one of my cards every like month, and I end up yelling at them because it's a big pain. And I have no liability or risk. It's all the risk of the bank and the Visa network.
So if that becomes a more serious problem over time, like credit card numbers are traded on the darknet markets, just like drugs.
Oh, totally. And you know, it's. I think the credit card companies are complicit with it too, to be honest. But I said this years ago on a podcast that there should be an insurance company like what we have is called the SIPC, and it's an insurance company that guarantees the accounts behind our firm. So if there was something like that for Bitcoin exchanges, like if Coinbase had an insurance that if fraud happened, there was this policy that would pay everybody out, it would do wonders for, you know, Bitcoin. But it costs money to have an insurance like SIPC.
Yeah, like identity theft in the Bitcoin world is an even bigger problem than it is in, I think, traditional markets, because getting your money stolen is straight up gone. There is no recourse.
I know, there's no recourse. That's the problem.
So what do you feel about, I guess, this whole ransomware thing with a lot of companies now? Like, banks, I think, are buying Bitcoin just as a ransomware protection. Like, you know, if someone hijacks our network and hides all our data from us, like we gotta be ready to pay it back right away.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it helps Bitcoin's reputation to have all the ransomwares demanding Bitcoin, but this hacking thing, and I have my own opinions about it, but it's pretty scary, and most companies are so behind with their technology and security, it's embarrassing. And like, you'd think cybersecurity would be just a booming business, and none of these companies make money. I don't really get what goes on in that industry. But we deal with it. I mean, they've spent millions at our broker dealer just on cybersecurity. So if you look at your average hospital's computer system, it's like they're using like Windows 95, and it's like, so yeah, this is going to go on and on and on.
But I think a lot of us in the Bitcoin space who own our own keys and have our personal security, like we're not subject to ransomware
Right.
of like major proportions. Like if like Visa gets hit with ransomware of all their account balances, like that is like game breaking stuff for financial markets.
Oh, totally. And once again, our firm, as well as every firm, is deathly fearful of all these things, and we don't actually tell people when we have computer problems and things like that, because the public wouldn't be happy about it if they really knew behind the scenes how many problems exist at all the brokerage firms with computer systems and trading. I mean, we've been offline for a day, and we're like screaming at people and like just praying the market doesn't move, so stuff happens in all these systems. And once again, you have the redundancies, you have the phone, you can call in the trades. So there's a lot of growing up that's going to happen with Bitcoin over the next decade. A lot of growing up, for it to be successful.
Well, just before you ask your question, Kiko, if you want any help backing up your trade data and your company data onto a blockchain, which might be a little more robust.
Well, I actually don't control any of it. Actually, it's all in the cloud, run by other people, so I don't have to worry about it in theory.
Oh, like the blockchain is one more step, and then you don't even have to involve other people. It's great.
Yeah, well, the financial institutions are looking at the blockchain. They are.
Sorry, Kiko, your question.
Yeah, my question's along that line. Just you're at that intersection between sort of traditional finance, and you obviously understand Bitcoin and blockchain. I'm just curious on your kind of, not competitors, but certainly peers that have kind of come out of that industry, like Blythe Masters starting digital asset holdings, and Patrick Byrne from Overstock starting the kind of T0 in that trade settlement business using.
I think there's going to, be a lot of entrepreneurs from parts of my industry getting into this industry because there is a lot of opportunity for it. And, I think it's good. That's kind of what you want. You want the guys that have built big systems to really get involved and create more stability for the entire network of people involved. So, it's kind of like Bitcoin is this like global group of people who work on this thing for everybody's benefit, really. And the better people you have involved with it and building the ecosystem, the better it will be. So that's kind of the coolest thing about it, is the ecosystem of people like you guys involved with it, because it would be dead without you. But it's a lot of really interesting, smart, kind of crazy people involved with Bitcoin. But you've drawn in, people like me, for example, who, see the potential, get it, and many people are going to take the next step and get into a business to try to do it. I've thought about it. I'm not allowed to, based off where I am in my current job, and I've thought about many ways to deal with this. But I also think, to some degree, being the first in a space has a lot more risk and a lot more reward. But if you kind of wait a little bit and wait for things to sort of shake out, you can sometimes really target something opportunistic. So we'll see how things shake out with Bitcoin. I think the best opportunity right now is just buying some of the currency and sitting on it and seeing how this stuff works out with the ICOs and the frauds and sort of the bounces it's going to take on the way up.
definitely been like ebbs and flows. Like, I won't say this is the first ICO season I've seen, because like whenever the market gets hot and fluffy with people with profits, like when Ethereum goes crazy in price, a lot of people feel really rich, and what do they want to do? They want to reinvest it. So like, yeah, the market is, you know, got a lot of greedy people in it, and that's, you know, hot for.
That's when you sell. Yeah, that's when you sell.
And probably by this Christmas time, I think we'll be seeing some new highs, or like that will probably be, we'll get another scenario like in 2013 where on the news someone was showing off their paper wallet, and being the noob that they are, they show their key, it gets stolen right away. We need one of those moments, and that's when it's like, yeah,
happened.
Yeah, or you could have the U.S. government like not pass a bill to increase the debt ceiling and default on the government debt, and Bitcoin will be worth 50,000. So, you know, Donald Trump is your dream boy. You know, we've got the dumbass in presidents. You know, and like he's going to get impeached. Like he can't even get through 6 months, man. I mean, I gave him I didn't even like him. I gave him credit for at least a year or two, and he's guilty of all of it too. So you know, these guys are going to catch him. He's already caught. So this uncertainty could spike dramatically in the next 6 months. So, you know, if you're a Bitcoin investor, you know, you kind of want to pray for an impeachment right now, because you could double the price of Bitcoin with that right there.
Mike Pence, leader of the free world.
Oh my God.
I know, Pence. I know.
Well, so it's funny. A lot of the Trump voters I've met in real life are usually involved in Bitcoin in some way. I think they knew what they were like. They weren't there putting him in to like fix things. They're
Controlling the system.
Yeah, they're like, you know, we'll blow it up and make money off of it. Yeah, great.
Yeah, exactly. So they have the long-term vision, but I think I think it might be good to have a little churn in that system. We'll see. But yeah, there's a lot less confidence in what is the global reserve currency right now.
Oh, really? Dollar. You think a lot less? Like, how about zero? You know, I mean,
U.S. under new management.
No, you know. So the other side of the coin is, if that was true, the U.S. government bond would have lost a lot of value, and actually people are buying the bond, including me, as a haven of safety. So if you look at yields have come down on the treasuries because everybody's scared. So you've got that trade, you've got treasuries, you've got Bitcoin, and gold. So we've got these hedge trades for the impeachment, you know, against our tech stocks or whatever. You know.
So what do you think about these ETFs that are trying to get passed by the SEC for Bitcoin? Like, will you be kind of offering the Winklevoss Bitcoin ETF to your customers?
I will never give the Winklevosses $1 if it's the last thing I do. Everything they are is everything I hate about Harvard. You know, I went to Penn. I hate elitist rowers from Harvard. You know, like I was like the, you know, stoner hippie guitar player at Penn. You know, so the problem with the Bitcoin ETF, and we looked into this, is that there isn't enough Bitcoin. So how would the ETF actually function when an ETF has to buy a Bitcoin every time somebody buys the ETF? So I know some big people at Bitcoin, and I called them up and I said, you know, I want to buy 250,000 worth of Bitcoin. 250,000. How do I do it? He's like, oh, that's a problem. I go, why? He goes, well, that size just doesn't trade. So you got to go to the one guy who's like Draper, who bought $17 million worth of Bitcoin, and he's basically like a market maker. So this guy is printing money right now, you know. And I laughed at him for a while, and boy, he's proven me wrong, you know. And he's turned that 17 million probably into 50 or 60 million, you know, or more. And so basically you got one guy to trade at. He's cornered Bitcoin. So there's some wisdom to cornering the market in Bitcoin. And what I heard, the Winklevosses bought 1% of all of Bitcoin. So if that's true, they've made billions of dollars. So the ETF has the problem is that if they go on the New York Stock Exchange and they get, let's say, $360 million worth of orders, where the hell would they get $360 million worth of Bitcoin? So the SEC can't approve it because there's no mechanism for it to actually work.
Yeah, they're worried about shortage and liquidity being.
Yeah, there's just no way. It wouldn't work now.
represent Bitcoin.
Go into Coinbase and punch in a trade for like 100 grand. You know,
See what happens.
That's because Coinbase doesn't.
It's 10 grand. It's 10 grand limit or whatever. You know.
The funny thing is, it's like Coinbase is like a registered exchange, and it gets a lot of stigma in the community of like people having to get up a lot of data and having to report taxes because of using it. And like now the traditional investors can't meet that supply of Bitcoiners who are notoriously trying to kind of be low key.
KYC is bad everywhere. People get mad at Coinbase.
You have no way around it.
Volatile. They cancel everyone's trades.
Yeah.
Like a week later, they say, "Oh, that trade you did, sorry, we're undoing it."
Yeah.
Yeah, but you can't get around KYC in this country. You know, and that's the whole thing. It's like, you know, for any exchange to work in the United States, you have to disclose tax ID numbers. That's just the way it is, and that's why, you know, you have these problems because of money laundering. So it's all because of ISIS. You know, the last thing you need is Al Qaeda using Bitcoin. You know.
Well, if anything, it makes it a lot easier to track. Like if they were able to find like payments, like there's records of all of it on the blockchain too, right? I understand that could be
true, but it's easier if they use Visa.
Final question maybe here is, do you think anonymous people should be able to own stocks, securities, and currencies?
You mean like, should you be able to own securities without disclosure?
Me being like a pseudonymous person on the internet, like I can create a new email address and send some Bitcoin to that account on an exchange and like own securities or...
No, I don't think that should happen. And so here's the whole thing, you know. So you have to fundamentally, you know, agree or disagree with legalities of certain behaviors, let's say. So, for example, I have a friend who died from an overdose of prescription pills, okay? So every day, Bitcoin is traded for prescription drugs on the internet. And if I can just do this anonymously and own securities and trade, I can be responsible for a lot of people dying, overdosing on drugs. And when it's your best friend or your friend who does it, it's like all of a sudden it's not okay, you know? And so I'm for legalization of certain drugs, but I'm actually against that legal drugs are legal. So like, I don't think all these prescription drugs should just be, you go get them and some doctor just could. I think doctors are the worst drug dealers, you know? So, you know, so I think if you have a moral code, there should be accountability for the behaviors of us as citizens, as global citizens, not a Canadian or American or whatever, for the well-being of our society. So terrorism is a horrible scourge in our world today. And it doesn't matter if you're Canadian or American or European, a bomb in the middle of an airport in the middle of Brussels could kill any of us, okay? And I have a friend who was killed in a suicide bombing in Jordan many years ago. Not a friend, somebody I knew from school. And it's like mind-blowing to think that her wedding was one of the weddings that was like one of the first bombings that caused the involvement of the United States in this whole thing. And when she was killed. And so if we let these guys just set up and own securities and trade money and do this to cause harm and mayhem in our societies, we're just enabling them. So where that line is really hard. It's really hard. You know, like, you know, we should have a certain amount of privacy and ability to do stuff. And then we also need to protect our society from the bad things that exist. And so money laundering and not having accountability, especially for a large amount of money, definitely ends up creating a lot of death, harm, trading weapons. You know, I say it all the time. You've never heard of the Syrians running out of bullets. Have you ever heard of any battle in Syria where they were like, oh, the enemy ran out of ammunition? Like, how is that possible? You know how many billions of dollars are made in the war in Syria? Like, people don't talk about it, but there's movies about these things. So I'm absolutely a believer that people should be accountable for what they do, but they should be able to do what they want. And so I believe in personal freedoms, but I also believe in accountability. And why should you care if what you do is essentially fine and good, you know?
So it sounds like that's a problem that's not really just limited to crypto either, of people being able to profit off of scenarios.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. It's across what we do every day, and the entities we do business with, and what's legal and not legal. It's corruption, public corruption. So if you look at the corruption in Brazil, you know, my partner Kawasaki, which we started the show with, he's actually from Brazil, but he's half Japanese. And what's happening in Brazil is so sad. It's so horrible. The Brazilian people are such wonderful people. It's such a wonderful country. You should definitely go if you've never been. And to see them just like flailing, you know, as the politicians, like a low-level guy was stealing like 100 million, you know what I mean? And it's like, if you don't have accountability, these politicians just steal from us, you know? I mean, you guys are lucky you have Trudeau. He wouldn't take a candy bar, you know? But, you know, it's like every of the politicians stealing everything. So you have to have that accountability. And that's how Trump's going to get caught, too, because of that accountability. And if there wasn't that accountability, then we're never going to catch the guy like Trump. And now we will.
Well, this is part of what I really like about crypto is it's really easy to be transparent. I can sign an address and say, yes, I have 1 Bitcoin here and this is mine. Like that level of accountability can exist in the space and transparency if people are willing to do it. So like people to publish their campaign finances, like now they can, you know, verify it across all the different blockchains and everything. The transparency aspect of crypto, I think, is more of a solution to this problem than continuing.
Totally. And like, what do you really have to hide? You're not doing anything illegal, you know? It's like, no, but you know what I'm saying. You guys don't look like you're like trafficking guns or like prostitutes or something, you know? I'm not talking about like, oh, you like, you know, did some ecstasy once or something, you know? Like, so let's be real on, you're fundamentally good people. So the purpose of what you're doing, like this show, isn't to rip people off. It's to help people. And Canadians are so nice. You guys aren't even good at ripping people off, you know? And actually that's not true. The Canadian exchange is kind of known for that. But in general, so I believe that most people are fundamentally good and they just want to go about their lives and there is nothing to hide. So who cares, you know?
Yeah, we are very fortunate in Canada, I think, right now too, with our lax regulation on crypto and allows awesome and weed, because they are very similar technologies in a lot of ways. Of like, I mean, they're just ideas that can't be destroyed. Like, where was I going? Okay, so they're both billion-dollar industries right now that are probably going to get regulation sometimes in the next 2 years. That allows them to be trillion-dollar industries, which crypto definitely will be a trillion-dollar industry. Weed will probably get there eventually, but like
white hot investment space.
Well, even if it's 100 billion, you're talking about big. You know, even if it's hundreds of billions. To leave you guys with a funny image, I've been questioned by lawyers about my involvement with cryptocurrency and weed. You know, and because I'm a pro legalization guy, and you know, and I'm like, you know, I'm not involved with any weed business and I'm not involved with any Bitcoin business. You know, I just talk about this stuff and, you know, I pay attention to it and I own some Bitcoins and I smoke some weed, you know, and it's like, you know, the fear around this change in our society with weed and Bitcoin. And funniest part about it is all the calls we get are, hey, do you know a way for us to get investing in weed or investing in Bitcoin? So that's the best thing that you guys can leave with, is to know that people want in on this stuff. And if you guys can do this right, I mean, you guys could be really rich guys by accident, you know? Sometimes you just get on a wave and it works. And this could be that. And that's why I own some of it. So the only thing you should be concerned about is making sure the criminals get out of this so that the governments of the world don't just fucking clamp down and shut it down. And that's the only thing you should be worried about, because if you can solve that, this thing, you know, it goes up forever.
That's great advice. I mean, in terms of like trying to progress both of these industries forward. So let's do our final wrap up of the show here. We have a little tradition where we like to predict the price of Bitcoin in 1 week's time.
Oh, it's just a week.
Yeah. So what do you think Bitcoin is going to be next Thursday at this time?
Boy,
I mean, looking at this like $500
I
candle
can't
right
even
now,
do
it's
any
like,
technical analysis on that chart, huh?
oh,
Honestly,
no.
I think Bitcoin goes to new highs. I think there's a fucking ton of cash out there right now, and you know, people are just desperate to put it anywhere, and I don't see how it doesn't go higher.
So you can't give us a number today?
I mean, that's just, you know, I don't usually play that game, but yeah, you know, I say it breaks 3,000, so maybe in a week it's at 3,000.
3,000. All right, I like that.
I think it retests the high. I think it retests it.
Cool. Kiko, what do you think the price is going to
Come back to me. I'm gonna have a look at this chart here.
Oh my god. Okay. Taylor.
So now it's 2,700.
Yeah, it's
I'll
27.45.
say it stays there.
27.45. I'm gonna try and I'm gonna say we're gonna hit some new highs because like we should be seeing activation and stuff. So I'm gonna say 3,200.
Oh, you're going bold. I should buy some if that happens, huh?
Well, I may or may not have a leverage trade place for a long on Bitcoin, but we'll see if that pans out. Kiko, you decide yet? I know you always are running some stops.
Yeah, I'm gonna be close to you, like I'd say 3,100.
Right. Yeah, because we're pretty
go through it, but then we'll come back down.
All right. Yeah, week is tough.
Well, you know, it's got to test that 3,000. If it can blow through 3,000, your next stop is higher for sure. You know.
Mm-hmm.
But sometimes it'll test that 3,000 a few times because there could be computer sell orders at 3,000, you know.
Well, and I think we're really fortunate trading in the space still. There's not a lot of high frequency trading happening. It's a lot of manuals and.
Oh, totally.
Yeah, that's where I say it's great to learn here. You know?
Yeah, there's definitely money to be made trading Bitcoin if you're sophisticated.
Well, we appreciate your time today, Ross, and thanks to our sponsors too, CoinCards, who operates in Canada, and you've had regular conversations with FinTrack. They are not operating illegally. Same with Bittrex. They are they are a licensed exchange in the United States, based in Las Vegas and working out of Seattle. They signed up for Bit license as soon as it came out, and they're just getting the paperwork finalized to be a registered money transmitter license, MTL. So yeah, really good sponsors for the show. We don't bring you anything but the best. And Ross, you have been one of the best guests we've had on the show. Thank you so much.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it, and thanks for having me. And I always enjoy it. And keep up the good work. You know, clean up the place, and we all make a lot of money.
Sounds like a good plan. Yeah. All right, and everyone at home, be sure to like, comment, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next.
Follow me on Twitter as well at gerberkawasaki.com.
Yes, you got to plug your business too.
Yeah, it's my job.
Yeah. So thank you all, and make sure you subscribe to Blocktalk to learn more about the Bitcoin space and wonderful guests like Ross. So we'll see you in the next 1,000 blocks.